Hi. So we're going to do our first micro lecture for fall 2020. And before we get started, I want you to make sure that you have turned off your phone, that you have that you're not checking other social media things. When you're doing these micro lectures, you need to take notes and you need to stay focused. So in order to make sure that you can do that, either pause this video and print off the notes that go with it, or if you've already got them, make sure that you have a pen and paper and that you can fill them out, or whatever method you're going to use. So pause this video and then continue once you have all of your materials. So before I get started, when I'm teaching in class and teaching this class in particular, there's always something that's in the news. And so I like to start out with something that's in the news that will be relevant to the course in the future or is relevant right now. And this image that you see here is from a website that's called Null Earth. Earth Null School, and it takes information and projects it in almost real time. And so right now we're looking at wind speed in information that's being shown on this globe. And so if I grab this globe, I'll just orient yourself. There's Africa over here. This is the outline of the coast of Africa. And as we go across the Atlantic, we've got Florida, the Caribbean down here, up into the Canadian eastern seaboard. And what I want to point out are these storms where you can see these winds are being pulled into the center. Now, as you go to reds, you're getting a stronger graph, and I can just pull it up here. So it's showing the scale here. So blue is slow winds, and as you get up into these reds, pinks, things like that, we're going into higher and higher winds. We'll just get rid of that. So we can see that there's one that's spinning off the coast of Florida and Louisiana here. There's one that's spinning out in the Atlantic. This is a stronger storm. You can see that the winds are being pulled in faster just by looking at it, but also you can see we've got that pink around the eye of the storm there. We've got a weaker storm out here. Winds are still being pulled into it, but not as quickly as these ones, and one down here. And if we look at the National Hurricane Center website, we can see the names of these storms. So here again, over here, we've got the coast of Africa. And the one that's about to make landfall is Tropical Storm Sally. You can see that she's not filled in, or that image or that icon is not filled in. So it's showing that it's a tropical storm. It's showing how quickly the winds are blowing, and it's about to make landfall. Paulette is a full-fledged hurricane. She is out in the Atlantic further, and I haven't looked at her path, but we could look at her path on Wednesday and see whether or not she's going to affect the eastern seaboard or continue north and over further in the Atlantic and just kind of peter out and not affect anything. Renee is a tropical depression, and we'll talk more about all these terms, but it's not quite as strong as, say, Sally would be. That's a tropical storm. And then 20 down here, that's the even weaker one that we saw. So we're going to talk about all of these things later, but I just wanted to bring it up because that's what's happening right now. Okay, so now we're going to get started. So today, what we're going to talk about are fundamental concepts and definitions. So this is week 1, and we're going to be using chapter 1 from your textbook. So make sure that you read chapter 1. What we're going to be talking about today we are going to be talking about natural hazards versus disasters and catastrophes, and we're going to talk a little bit about human-environment interactions. So, what is a natural hazard? Well, it's a natural event that poses a threat to human life, that's going to damage property, or that it changes or alters the environment. When it becomes a disaster, this is a hazardous event that has occurred over a limited time span in a defined geographic area, and it results in loss of life, significant loss of life, let's not forget that, significant loss of life, or significant loss in property. And then to be a catastrophe, it has to be a massive disaster. And so that can be massive in scale, affecting a large area. It can be massive in the number of deaths that it causes or results in, or it can be massive in the expenditure or the cost to rebuild or to recover from that event. And so when it's a disaster or a catastrophe, it's subjective, basically. There isn't like a standard that says if you have a damage over $1 million, it becomes a disaster. Or if you have deaths over 500 people, it becomes a disaster. It's really a subjective term. But basically, when it's a disaster or a catastrophe, it has affected humans in a significant manner. And so when we think about natural hazards, we would have them without them being affecting people. That storm Paulette might just peter out in the Atlantic. And so it's a natural hazard, but it's not really affecting anyone. And so it doesn't become a catastrophe or a disaster, and it will just peter out. But when we're not prepared, when it takes us by surprise, when it's more extreme than it's been before, and we start to lose lives or have significant damage of property, that's when it becomes a natural disaster. And so we can mitigate some of these effects, and we're going to talk about mitigation throughout this course, because natural hazards are inevitable, but natural disasters are not. And that's a quote directly from your textbook on page 8. So your textbook uses a different example to take you through. It talks about rivers, but I'm going to take you through wildfires. And again, this is a current event that's happening. And if you've been following the news in Vancouver, they had very bad air quality from the fires as the smoke drifts north from Oregon, Washington, and California. And so this picture is actually, well, maybe you recognize this bridge. I'll just give you a second to think about it. It's an iconic bridge in the US, and it's the Golden Gate Bridge. It's in San Francisco, and this is at 11 a.m. on September 9th. And you can see that the lights are on. You can barely see anything. You can see all of the lights down in the valley below the bridge are on as well down here, and that it doesn't look like it's daytime, and that's because of the thickness of the smoke. Now, if we're going to look at this in the context of natural hazards, disasters, or catastrophes, we need somebody who's a little smarter than I am about these things. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go to a website, which is the CAL FIRE website, and it updates everybody. It's just, on the internet about the fires that are burning in California. And so there's several places that we can go here. And what I'm first going to take you to is I'm going to take you down to the bottom here. Nope, I'm not going to take you there. I'm going to take you to the incident report. So let's go to the incident report. So this incident overview shows you all the fires that are burning currently. And so these are the ones that are active now. And if we move further down, this is where I wanted to go. Right now, since the beginning of the year, wildfires have burned over 3.1 million acres in California. And so this year's acres burned is 26 times higher than the acres that were burned in 2019 over the same period. And so these are unique, and they are a lot bigger. We have 7,718 incidents of wildfires. So far, 20 fatalities have been recorded, and 4,716 structures have been damaged or destroyed, and it's still going on. And so one of the things that you can do with this website, if you're interested in following up, is you can choose a particular fire and click on it, and it should come up with some more information. Here we go. So here we have a wildfire. It has its start date. It talks about when it was last updated. So it was last updated today. And you can get some more information that it's active, it's still burning, and often you can find out what started it too. And I'm not sure why we're not seeing that here. Let's go to another one. Let's go to this complex. So it's 28% controlled. The acres burned, you can see, are more than 8,000, almost 900,000 acres. And you can see that it's contained, that the cause of that fire is lightning. Now, not always are they lightning, but we're going to talk about wildfires as natural events. The last thing that I wanted to show you here, well, actually, I think that that's enough for now, but it gives you an idea of the severity of these fires. Actually, this one page of this website will show you the fires that are burning in Oregon, as well as Washington State. So Washington State, Oregon State. And let's see if this will work. No, I guess it does. They don't have the same data on these fires that are burning here. And then you can see Vancouver here. So the smoke from these fires has been filling the valleys of Vancouver and bringing down the air quality there quite a bit over this weekend. So, is it a natural hazard? Absolutely. It is a natural hazard that they have a fire season in down in California, and right now the fire season over the last couple of years has become 75 days longer, which means that you have hot temperatures, you have strong winds, you have drought, you haven't had rain for a period of time. The wildfire season ends when the rains come in the winter and the precipitation comes in the winter season. And so it is a natural hazard. And before people lived in California, we still had wildfires there. There were still wildfires occurring. Is it a natural disaster? Well, definitely we have loss of life, loss of property, as we saw on that website. And so it qualifies as a natural disaster, actually. And really, the amount of area that's burned might even bring it into catastrophe. A lot of people have lost their homes, their livelihoods. The season is still ongoing. It's still going to go on really until November, basically. And so we're looking at possibly a natural catastrophe that's occurring right now. Again, the disaster and catastrophe is because of the effect on humans. So we have several types of natural disasters, and this diagram takes you through a classification of them, looking at geophysical, hydrologic, meteorologic, climatologic, biologic, and extraterrestrial. And so I'm just going to bring your attention to a couple of these. And one of them is an epidemic or a pandemic. And that's, of course, what we're experiencing right now with COVID-19. So that would be classified as a biologic natural disaster. We're mostly focusing on all of these ones here in this box. And this one little extra one here for extraterrestrial. And so we're not really focusing on the biologic, but we'll talk a little bit about that when we meet together on Friday this week. I took this image, or I got the data from the Public Safety Government Canada website, and I put together the occurrence from 1920 to 2020, although the data ends at 2016 on that website. But that's what I wanted to look at the last 100 years. And so if you look at the geologic, or the occurrence of geologic events, you can see that it's pretty low. Like, we don't get over one a year in that whole 100-year time span. If you look at the events for the meteorological and hydrologic, which they've lumped together and I've just left together, you can see that it's fairly stable. I mean, we get ups and downs, but it's fairly stable until about 1960. And then after 1960, it starts to rise. And my red pen is not doing as well as my other pen there, but you can see that it starts to rise. And I've put in an arrow there to indicate where we stop going from pretty steady state or pretty, just some fluctuation, but staying fairly low to where it's increasing over and over again. And of course, what stands out is 2008, where we had 39 events. So that was quite something. So what this graph shows is the trend over time, and how in Canada, the trend over time, particularly in meteorological, hydrological, and you could really put some of those climatological ones from the last slide in here, have increased over time. Now, think about that. Why do you think that that would be? I'm going to let you think about that and write some of those ideas down. And we're going to come back to that later and talk about that on Friday. So think about that and make sure that you write some of those things down, why you think that's going to increase. The other thing that I wanted to talk about here is, again, because of that relationship between the environment and humans and how these events affecting humans makes it a hazardous environment. Not just a hazard environment, that it takes it from being a hazardous environment to either a disaster or a catastrophe. I'm going to take you through this graphic that comes from the Natural History Museum in the US. And so you can see here that human population is spreading out of Africa, across Asia, down into North America and South America. And once we developed agriculture and farming, the population steeply rises. Now, each dot on this map represents 1 million people, and we're going to start at year 1. One thing I like about this graphic is that it shows you the big empires and dynasties and the large concentration of civilization and control over these areas by different peoples over time. You also get an idea of how long-lived the Roman Empire was, the Golden Age of India, the rise of the Mayan civilization, and that the Silk Road is still a common transport route from China through the Middle East. So notice with the invention of the compass, now populations are starting to grow. we're also going to see expansion of these populations because travel is more, you know where you're going, you can get there, you can travel further afield. I'm recording. Yeah. Sorry. You're going to have to put a system where I'm recording and no one disturbs me. So as you can see now, modern technology and medicine means that people are living longer, and the Industrial Revolution. And with the Industrial Revolution, we start to see exponential growth. So it took 200,000 years for a population to reach 1 billion and only 200 to reach 7 billion. So our use of the Earth's resources has grown, but also the risk of disasters because more people live in harm's way. So you can see that increase in the trend of natural disasters that are occurring. And there's also that exponential increase in the population because we have more people that can be affected, more people moving into marginal lands, perhaps. And so we have more people in harm's way, and so we end up with more people being affected, and that means natural disasters. So at the end of each of these slides, there'll be some action items and some questions to follow up on. So I want you to write out a list of 10 natural hazards that you think would be found in Canada. I want you to write out what the trend is over time associated with disasters in Canada and whether you think that trend is worldwide and it would be the same, or why or why not. And also come up with 2 looming issues that will likely increase the occurrence of natural disasters. It should be of natural disasters. I'll correct that before I post my slides. And that's it for now. So that's what a micro lecture is. It's a short lecture, basically 1 or 2 concepts in together with some action items at the end, and then you go off and do those action items. And if there was a second micro lecture, you'd go on to that. But we'll leave that for now. We'll see you on Wednesday. That's it. Bye-bye.